Today's recipe calls for sriracha. I'm going to show you how to make a spicy teriyaki chicken. Meal prep, that is. It's got jasmine rice and some cauliflower. It's really tasty and fairly easy to make. So with that said, let's get started. The first component of our spicy meal prep we need to start with is the rice. Grab a medium-sized holding device. To that, you'll add in 1 cup or 213 grams of a good quality long grain Thai jasmine rice. After the grains have been placed in the bowl, add water to the holding device. Should be enough water to fully submerge the rice in the liquid. Give the grains a shimmy and shake for a few minutes. The goal is to wash off as much excess starch as possible. After a couple of minutes, you'll notice the water has become super cloudy and milky looking. Pour off all the cloudy water. Repeat the same process with fresh water. You'll wash the rice a total of 2 times. This will ensure we get as much of the starch off as possible. This step will help give us a nice fluffy rice, which in turn will give us a ton of individual grains instead of a big, clumpy, sticky mess if we didn't wash it. Now that it's squeaky clean, grab a fine mesh strainer and drain the rice. Drain all or as much of the water off as possible. We don't want to add any of the starchy water to our pot when we cook. It could throw off the entire cooking process. I find it helps if you shake and kind of gently toss the rice in the strainer to get rid of more of the water. Grab a pot that has a nice thick bottom and will also be perfect in size. We want something that will allow the rice to double in size once it's been cooked. Measure out 1 1/4 cup or 300 mils of cold water. You may have to squint and close one eye to get the proper measurement. Grab the H2O and the uncooked grains. Gently toss the pot over the heating element. Add the liquid in and give the pot a little shake to ensure all of the rice is fully underwater. It should also be in one nice even layer. Crank the heat up to a medium-high heat. We'll leave it on this ripping high heat until the water hits a simmer, meaning it is barely starting to bubble. Once it has reached this point, throw a lid atop of the pot. You want to use a lid that has a tight, snug fit to it. This will help keep the heat and steam in for the proper cook. After the top is on, turn your heat to a really low temp. Set a timer. We'll cook the rice on this low temp for 15 to 20 minutes or until the rice has doubled in size, is fluffy looking, and is tender in texture. Once you hear the buzzer, it's time to check the rice. It should look pillowy and light. All the liquid should have been completely cooked off as well. You can check this by grabbing a rubber spat and getting it between the rice and the pan. If the bottom is dry, you know it's done. If your rice isn't done, put the lid back on so you can allow it to cook for another few minutes. When it's done, take it off the heat source with the lid still attached to it. We want to allow the rice to steam and rest for 10 to 15 minutes before we mess with it. After the resting period is over, gently fluff the rice to break it up from the large puck it is. Grab a half tray. Toss the rice onto the sheet, make it into one nice even layer, set it aside to allow it to completely cool down. Grab yourself 1 large head of cauliflower, should be just over 1 pound or around 500 grams worth. We need to make little healthy florets of the white veggie. I find the easiest tool to make this happen is using a paring knife for this job. Flip that bad boy upside down so the root bulb is facing you. Then start to cut the little trees off the core section of the cauli. You'll want to cut fairly close to the top of the floret. Leave about 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch of stem on each piece. If you leave more than that, it'll be totally fine. Do your best to make all the pieces roughly the same size. This will help ensure everything has an even cook to it. We're shooting for white chunks that are roughly medium size in diameter. Pro tip, save some effort and time by buying either pre-cut cauliflower florets, or even easier, use the frozen stuff to really speed up the process. Next, grab a large pot, add some clear liquid known as water to the holding device. Fill it about 1/2 inch from the top of the pot. Season the water with a few good fat pinches of coarse ground kosher salt. Before we start cooking, we need to set up an ice bath. Grab a large bowl ski. To that, add about 2 cups of ice cubes.
Following the frozen water, add in the unfrozen type of water. Should be enough that you'll be able to fully submerge the cooked cauliflower in. Take the ice bath pot of water and the veggies over to the cooking unit. Toss the pot of water over the cooking element. Crank the heat up to high. We want to bring the water up to a boil. To help speed up the process, toss a lid on top. It'll trap the steam and heat, bringing the water to a boil quicker. Once the water hits a rolling boil, we can start cooking the veg. We'll cook the cauliflower in batches to prevent overcrowding the pot, which will help us achieve a proper cook. Should be about 5 to 6 handfuls, depending on how small your mitts are. Occasionally, give the pot of goods a stir from time to time. There are a few ways to know when they've been cooked to perfection. The first method is basing the cook off of time, which would be about 5 to 6 minutes, but I think the best method is to check the doneness with a fork or a tip of a knife. Pull a piece out of the water and stab it with a mini pitchfork. If it pierces the floret with ease without having to push too hard, you know it's done. You can also eat a piece of veg to check the tenderness/texture. We want it to be al dente, which means it should be a little soft, but still have a bit of crunchiness as well. It's the best of both worlds, and it's the only way to cook veggies. Once you achieve the proper cook, snag a spider or any type of slotted cooking utensil. Fish the veg out of the pot. Shake off as much of the water as you possibly can from them. Once you've done that, dunk them into the ice bath to shock them. It's imperative you do this step. Giving the goods a cold plunge will stop them from carryover cooking, preventing them from becoming mushy, locking in the texture and the good bright color. Let the veg chill in the ice bath for 2 to 3 minutes or until they are cold to the touch. Once they've reached maximum chill level, we need to strain and drain the veggies. Do not leave them in the ice bath for too long. If you do, they will become waterlogged, throwing off the taste and texture. Repeat the same process until all the healthy stuff has been cooked off. After they've been cooked, snag a half tray and a couple of clean kitchen towels. Place one of the towels onto the tray. Add the drained cauliflower to the lined out tray. Make them into one even layer. Toss the other kitchen towel atop of the goods. Gently pat them dry. We are trying to soak up any of the excess water they may be holding. Set the tray aside to allow them to continue to dry out while we move on to the next thing, which is our spicy teriyaki sauce for our little chicken. Grab a medium-sized yellow onion, chop the top off, which is the opposite side of the hairy root end. Cut the veg that makes the wheat cry into 2 equal pieces. We'll only be using half, so choose the better looking half and save the other side for another recipe. Peel off all the paper coat. We need to cut the onion into a small dice. To achieve that, cut from side to side, making sections that are about 1/8 inch thick. After you have that, give the onion a half turn. Then repeat the same cutting action, this time cutting from front to back, making the small sections once again. This will give us that small dice we're looking for. Set that aside so we can move on to the next fresh ingredient, which is 5 medium to large garlic cloves. Cut both ends off each piece, then give them a smash to peel the paper skins off. Repeat the same cutting method we used for the onion on the garlic. After that's occurred, mince the garlic into really small pieces. When you're happy with the size of your vampire repellent, set it aside so we can move on to our ginger. We'll use 1.2 ounces or 31 grams worth of this stuff. Peel the skin off using a spoon. We also need to mince the ginger into super small pieces as well. I find the best way to make this happen is by cutting the ginger into 1/8 inch little planks. After the planks have been made, cut them into small little sticks of freshness. Then stack them and then cut them into little cubes. From there, you can use the rocking motion to mince them into even smaller pieces. The smaller, the better. Let's get the rest of the goods prepped out. We need 4 tablespoons of dark brown sugar, 4 tablespoons of rice vinegar, next 2 tablespoons of some white sesame seeds. To bring that fiery spiciness, we'll add in 2 tablespoons of sriracha. Of course, use more or less depending on what you enjoy. Using a liquid measuring device, pour yourself half a cup or 100 mils of a low sodium soy sauce. Finally, measure out half a cup or 100 mils of some water. Set all this nonsense aside so we can cook our chicken first before we make the sauce. Before we get to the protein, we need to preheat the oven box. Set the temp to 450 Fahrenheit or 230 degrees Celsius. Grab 4 medium to large sized chicken breasts. You may or may not need to clean the chick up. You'll notice the chicken breast may be uneven in size. One side will be a little thicker than the other. We want to make it into one even layer. This will help ensure we get a proper even cook. Before we flatten things, grab some type of protective layer, either plastic wrap that will completely cover the chicken, or you can put them in a zip top style bag as well. This will help ensure that we won't be spreading any type of bacteria. Once covered, use your favorite smashing device. Give the thicker side of the breast a few good whacks until it is the same thickness all the way across. You'll want to use a medium smashing force when doing this. The chicken breast I used are on the larger side of things, so in the end, each meal ends up with a ton of chicken. Repeat this until all 4 pieces are flattened out. Now that the protein height has been taken care of, grab a half tray and line it with some parchment paper. Drop the chicken onto the tray, season both sides of the meats. Hit it with a few pinches of coarse ground kosher salt and cracked black pepper. Ensure the pieces are not touching to ensure we achieve the best bake. Once you've made it hail seasoning, snag the tray and huck that thing into the oven. Place it on the middle rack for the best baking results. We'll cook this first side for 5 to 6 minutes. When the buzzer rings, pull the tray of goods out of the heat. We'll give the chicky chick a quick flippy floppy. This will help us get an even bake on the protein. Set another timer to cook the other side for 5 to 6 minutes as well. In total, we'll bake the chicken for 10 to 12 minutes or until it hits an internal temp of 155 Fahrenheit or 68 degrees Celsius. Times may vary depending on how hot your oven runs. If you can, always use an instant read thermometer that has been calibrated. Ensure you stick the thermometer in the exact middle of the thickest part of the chicken breast. Cooking it at a high temperature to this degree of doneness will keep the chicken super tender and juicy. After the buzzer rings and the internal temp checks out, pull them things out of the oven. Set them aside to allow them to rest for 10 to 15 minutes before we cut them. This will give the chicken the chance to reabsorb any of the juices that may be trying to escape out. After the resting period is over, cut each chicken breast into a small or medium dice. Grab a large sauté pan and all of our prepped ingredients from earlier. Take everything over to the cooking device. Place the pan over a burner that has been set to a medium level of hotness. We'll be dry toasting the sesame seeds for 3 to 5 minutes or until they become a nice golden brown color. They will also become very fragrant and smell as well when it hits this sweet, sweet color. Occasionally toss the seeds around to prevent them from burning. This will also help us get that even toasting action. When you reach the golden color, clear the pan out. Crank the heat down to a low-medium level of hotness. Next, hit the pan with a light spray of some cooking oil. Immediately after, toss the onion into the hot pan. Give it a small sprinkle of coarse ground kosher salt. Sauté the onions for 6 to 7 minutes or until they become translucent in color. Once they've become basically see-through, add the minced garlic and ginger to the pan. Sauté the next set of ingredients for about a minute or two, or until things become very fragrant and smell. When the air becomes delicious smelling, deglaze the pan with the water. Following that, pour in the soy sauce. Add in the brown sugary sweetness. Whisk the sugar into the liquid to help dissolve it in. This will ensure it doesn't stick and burn to the pan. After the whisking work, dump in the rice vinegar. Finally, add the sriracha to the sauce. Cook the sauce over low heat for 2 to 3 minutes. This will allow the flavors to come together into one delicious liquid. Give it a quick taste test and adjust the flavor as needed with whatever your little heart desires. Could be more spice, sweetness, or acid. It's up to you. When you're happy with the flavor, we need to thicken things up. We'll add a small amount of a cornstarch slurry, which is 1 tablespoon of cornstarch mixed into 2 tablespoons of cold water. It'll be a thin, milky looking liquid. When you have that made and the sauce is at a light, bubbly simmer, we'll add it to the pan in a slow, steady stream. While you're doing that, you should be whisking it into the sauce with the other hand. Keep whisking and pouring things in until everything is fully incorporated into the sauce. Allow the sauce to cook for an additional 3 to 4 minutes or until it hits a simmer once again and has thickened up. When it's thick like thighs, dump the toasted seeds in. Give those a quick mix in, then take the sauciness off the heat source. Now we need to coat the chicken in our homemade spicy glaze. You can do this any which way you would like. I like to take most of the sauce out of the pan, leaving around a quarter of it behind. This will let me control how much is being used because I really do not like overly saucy items. Anyways, add the chick to the pan of sauce, toss things around till the protein has been fully coated. Add more sauce in as needed. Still a snack or two for research purposes. Of course, nobody will know. Now that all of our meal prep components are finished, snag your holding containers so we can divide things out. We'll use a kitchen scale to portion out the meals. If you've never done this before, it's simple even though math is hard and sucks. But anyways, grab the total weight of each item, then divide it by however many meals you plan on making. Each meal of mine will have 118 grams of jasmine rice. Each meal will have 150 grams of cauliflower. The last thing we need to add is our spicy coated chicken. Each meal will have 265 grams of chicken in it. It's best to ensure the glaze is well distributed throughout the cubed chicken. If you have any sauce left over, I highly recommend adding it to the rice. It'll make it look extra bougie looking while also bringing flavor. To add more color, add some green onion. Anyways, now that everything is portioned out, pop the lids atop of these containers and toss them into the fridge box. Warm them up in the radioactive box when it's feeding hour. Eat these throughout the week, or if you're crazy, eat them all in one day, which does not sound good, but if it works for you, have at it. Whatever you decide to do, just enjoy.
Alright, now that our spicy teriyaki chicken meal prep is done, let's give it the old taster-oo. So looking at it, came out looking super tasty. It's not the most aesthetically pleasing because it's pretty boring in the color department, but it's not about how pretty it looks. It's about the macros. So other than that, it looks really good, and let's give it a shot. Let's start with the rice. Try to get a little bit of rice and a little bit of sauce. The rice came out super tasty. The rice itself has that really distinct jasmine flavor to it, and it's the best grain to ever exist in my humble opinion. The sauciness on top brings a ton of goodness to the table as well. Texture-wise, it's nice and fluffy and light and just perfectly cooked. So let's move on to the cauliflower next. Just get a basic piece here. Our cauliflower also came out really good as well. It has that distinct healthy flavor to it, which you can't buy in the store, but maybe you can because it's called a vegetable and that's what this is. It tastes good. It could use a little pinch of kosher salt at the very end, so don't be afraid to use some. It'll bring more of the natural flavors that it holds. We got the perfect cook on it, so it's nice and al dente and has a little bit of crunch to it, which will be nice and beneficial since the other two ingredients are a bit soft. So let's try our chicken next. Try to get a piece. Our chicken came out so dang bomb. That spicy teriyaki glaze or sauce, whatever you want to call it, brings a ton of flavor to our meal prep. The first thing that hits your palate is that distinct umami saltiness from our soy sauce. Then you get a bit of spiciness from our sriracha, which is super delicious. You also get some sweetness from the sugar, but to help counterbalance that is the acid in our rice vinegar, and it just helps cut through that sweetness and makes it more of a well-rounded sauce. The toasted sesame seeds bring a bit of nuttiness and some flavor as well. The garlic and ginger bring a pop of freshness to the table and makes it just super delicious tasting. Texture-wise, the chicken is nice and tender and just kind of melts in your mouth. Then those little sesame seeds and the garlic and ginger pieces also add a little bit of crunch as well, which is super nice. It plays really well with the rest of the components, and I think any gym bro would be pretty excited to eat this. This meal prep meal is super simple to slap together, and you can easily customize this thing any which way you like to fit your needs. Maybe cut down on the spice level because you're not too much of a spicy person, or make it extra spicy, which is a terrible idea because you're gonna get those little tummy demons and you're gonna try to do legs one day at the gym and it's not gonna be fun. Trust me, okay? Or you can swap out the boiled cauliflower and do a roasted cauliflower, which sounds a lot better. It's gonna bring so much more flavor to the table. So hopefully you enjoyed today's video. Thanks for watching. And I've picked up a new hobby of dirtying all the dishes I own, and it's not a good time, so I gotta go reevaluate everything I'm deciding to do because I'm tired of doing dishes. But we'll see you on the next one. Bomb. Bomb. The toasted sesame seeds. That nice, distinct. Super. Eggs, and you're in a compromised position.